Welcome to How to Share, a podcast about sharing to the appropriate audience in the best way at the right time. I'm Wynne Leon, and in this episode, I'm with filmmaker and philanthropist Peter Samuelson. We're talking about how to share inspiration. Peter just released his fantastic book, Finding Happy. It has so many great stories encouraging participation in making this world a better place. As Peter says, I spend a lot of time persuading people that selflessness can be selfish. In this episode, we talk about how to catch others' hearts. Peter writes that most people are open to being moved. We talk about using enthusiasm, passion, empathy, and storytelling to do just that. Peter talks about finding allies along the way. He tells us about the electric moments of creativity and collaboration working with Steven Spielberg and how we can share similar sparks with others. Peter tells us about the Jewish idea of Tikkun Olam, our responsibility to heal the world, and he introduces me to a new phrase, Hineni, here I am. This is a great episode in which Peter does such an amazing job of catching our hearts to show us how to share inspiration. I know you'll love it. Hi, Peter.
Well, good afternoon, Wynne.
So good to see you. Your book, Finding Happy, launched yesterday. I have my copy here. Is launching a book, does it feel a lot like releasing a movie?
No, I would say not at all.
Really?
It's substantially more nerve-wracking because the entirety of it is on me. Whereas when you make a film, you have a writer, a director, a videographer, the costume designer, the editor, and this, that, and the other, and the studio. And you never get all the credit, and you shouldn't, but you never get all the blame either. Whereas the book is kind of a pure play. It's like painting a painting.
Right. And it is your stories. I mean, and you've done a beautiful job telling them. So I could see why that feels more personal. It's you out there.
Well, I hope so. I felt that it wouldn't be useful to the intended audience, which is young adults, Gen Z, and the lower end of millennials, kind of what I know now that I wish I knew when I was 18. I felt this is not going to be helpful unless I do what I do when I'm mentoring, which is to make myself vulnerable. And if I'm talking about what is a good risk, what is a bad risk, and how can you tell the difference, well, I should talk not just about risks I took, thank goodness, or risks I didn't take, great, could have killed me, but I should also talk in the opposite directions and talk about when I did take a risk that was really stupid and I did nearly die, and also how I didn't take a risk and that wasn't smart. I should have put myself out and had a go at it. So, yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff in it for my kids to read and laugh at me. I didn't know you did such a stupid thing.
Well, there's that. But, I left a glowing review because one of the things that I love is that it's so inspiring. I mean, it's inspiring in an actionable way. You write chapter 4, you're talking about how you teach your scholars. I teach them that giving is the highest and noblest instinct of a human being, that it lifts us up, and that beyond anything else, it makes the world revolve every day. And, you spend a lot of time convincing people that selfless acts are very selfish. And tell us how that inspires your audiences.
Well, success in life, and this is also a pillar in the book, is storytelling. I believe that if you want to persuade someone of something, and as a young adult, God knows there is a whole conga line of older adults in front of you that you will have to persuade that you're the best person for them to give the job. You're absolutely the person they should give the scholarship. You are absolutely the person that they want working with them or for them or partnering with them. Life is persuasion, and how you present is part of it. You know, if you have a limp, damp handshake, that's not good. If you never look anyone in the eyes, that's not good either. But the other thing is, you have to, and this is great because you can rehearse it, you have to be able to generate empathy by telling a story. And the story can be about you, or it can be about something that you passionately care about. But your goal is to inspire the other person to be with you, to empathize either with you or with the, you know, when I pitch a film, I'm trying to make them really care about characters. But remember, when I'm pitching the film, we haven't made the film yet. There's maybe a script or maybe not even a script. So I'm selling care, you know, I'm trying to put enthusiasm, passion, and empathy and caring and a willingness to cooperate into the mind of the other person, who is, you know, if they work for a studio, probably very cynical and highly trained in the skill of saying no hundreds of times a week. And here I come along. So you have to create a bit of passion, because when someone's heart is moved, you made them laugh, you made them cry, you scared them, or you made them feel that empathy moment, those few minutes, and it doesn't last very long, that is when they are pliant. That is when they are flexible. That is when you can bring them along to do whatever this wonderful thing is that you would like them to help you with. Is it you're trying to get a film financed? So you better be able to talk about the story before you make the film, because otherwise you'll never get the money to make the film. But it could also be that you're trying to persuade someone you hope is a future boss that really, really they will love to have you working to their mission.
Right.
And that's why they should give you a job and pay you excellently. And you do that with storytelling. It is one of the oldest skills of human beings. Human beings have been telling stories since there was language, and you could even argue that the reason we have language is so we can tell each other stories. And, you know, how were people entertained and moved and led back in the Stone Age? Well, some itinerant guy or woman, you know, came along and stood on a rock and said, "Gather ye around, and I shall tell you a story of Sir Gawain and the Knights of the Round Table," or something like that. And if they were any good, they might get a coin at the end of it from the people, each of whom have been listening. So I do believe narrative storytelling, especially to create emotion, is a very good idea. One of the things I would commend to people's attention is study urban legends. There are books that are collections of urban legends. There was a very great dear friend of mine, Jan Brunvand, and he wrote endless books of urban legends. The thing about an urban legend is it's a story that has been told orally, mouth to ear to mouth to ear to mouth to ear, and over repetitions, the bits that didn't quite work in the story have fallen off the edge, and the bits that got a wonderful reaction, they've been added to and repeated. So you can see the ultimately helpful structure. And, you know, there are books about that too, you know, the hero's journey and 3-act structure. And there's a way of doing it. There is an arc to the hero's journey. And urban legends are perfected because they've been told mouth to ear a million times, and anything unhelpful fell away, and the bits that work. The other thing that's great is jokes. If you hear a joke that makes you laugh like a drain, go and write it down as it
Mhm.
was told to you, because that structure, which is usually similar joke to joke, and it's a combination of various things. And if you're interested in more detail, Sigmund Freud, the greatest psychiatrist in the history of the world, he wrote a book called, I think it's called Jokes and the Unconscious, and it's about, why do jokes work? What do they do? What is their structure? How do you get someone to find them funny and to empathize with them?
You
So
know,
it's a
yeah,
really interesting subject, and God knows, if you know one thing as a film producer or as a mentor, you better know your stories.
yeah. I love what you say about humor too. My dad was a Presbyterian pastor, and he always used jokes to create openness. He used humor all the time to do exactly what you said, which is, create a little empathy, humor, passion, open people up
Yeah,
for
and
the
I think what I've tried to do in the book Finding Happy is, I haven't just said, okay, be organized. Don't do your homework on the last day on the bus going to school. Do it on the first day when you get the homework, because then everyone else will be stressed and you'll be relaxed for the week that they're all being worried, and you'll be able to, play soccer. And what I've done, because you can't just be didactic like that, because kids get bored so easily, is I've tried to embellish it with funny things, scaring things, riveting things, sort of madness from my own life. I mean, one thing about being a film producer, boy, you work with some very strange people. You work with people who, because they are in a position of power, like a film star,
Mhm,
they get away with mad, crazy behavior, which anywhere else in the world, someone would say, are you nuts?
mhm,
No, we're not going to
right.
do that. I'm the one who used to have to go around the set. I made a film called The Return of the Pink Panther, and I'm the one who had to go around the set at 6 o'clock in the morning and say, do you mind going to wardrobe and change your socks or your T-shirt or whatever it was? Because Peter Sellers won't work if anyone is wearing green. Where else in the world than on a film with a
Mhm,
film star does that happen? Not, I think, much.
a lot. One of the things that, talking about all the incredible characters that you've worked with, you write about meeting with Steven Spielberg. And, you said, this is the genius of Steven. He creates these electric moments of creativity and collaboration. And I would argue that you've done the same thing in both in your career and the mentoring that you've done, and in this book, Finding Happy. But you also continue on to say most people are open to being moved, which is really what you were talking about. We can make our pitches. People are open to being moved.
And frankly, thinking back to my first encounter with Stephen, it's how you engage with someone who is vastly more powerful, important, creative, and everything else than you are yourself. You have to catch their heart. And I did that. And you do it, very interesting. If you're raising money for a venture, whether it's for profit or non-profit or trying to get a job, you can absolutely try and use statistics.
Mhm,
The ROI is going to be better than 18% a year. In the end, you'll never move anybody's heart with that. And even if you do, maybe there's someone you don't really want to spend the rest of your life working with, because they're only into the ROI, the
mhm,
return on investment. What you really want to do is to see if you experience a reaction of kindness and empathy from them. So you better tell them individual stories where they can identify with a character in your story, which might be you, might be me talking about one of my foster kids. You're engaging them by moving their heart, and that takes them to a place where they're open to collaborating, helping,
mhm,
hiring, doing, investing, donating. And I love doing that because I think you deduce a better group of people in your life. There's a very famous rabbi 850 years ago called Rabbi Maimonides. And he was actually from Spain, but he ended up in Alexandria. And it was an era where, please God, we could get back to this. The great religious leaders were all friends, and they had lunch together, and they wrote about each other in their scriptures. So he would have lunch with the imam and with the leader of the local Christians. He was the senior rabbi, and they would pal around. And he talked about this word, neshuma, N''shuma. And I remembered that my grandparents used to say favorably about someone, oh, what a wonderful man, what an incredible woman. They have the neshuma. But I never, as a child, I never knew what the heck is the neshuma. And then my mother-in-law, a psychologist, said to me, you talk about something, but you don't know the word for it. And I said, what? And she said, well, you tell me that you meet these people rarely, but it happens, and you are so connected to them by a sense of the need to make the world a better place that they become lifelong friends in 5 minutes. And the great stuff you've been able to do in non-profit, philanthropic entrepreneurship, call it what you will, has been because you found these kindred souls. And I said, yeah. And she said, well, go and read Maimonides and look up the neshama. So I did. And what Maimonides said is that you have 3 layers of your soul. Everybody's got the lowest one and the middle one, and they are everything you think your soul is. But then there's this top one that not everybody has. You don't own it. It's like a membership club. It's a membership club of everyone who feels moved to make the world a better place. And what he says is, when 2 people meet who have the neshama, when they meet for the very first time, they feel as though they have known each other 1,000 years. And they say, Hineni, the Hebrew for here I am. What shall we do? And as I read that, I thought, he's right. I know these people. There are people, right, and they're rare, but there's definitely, I don't know, there's hundreds in my life. I've been so lucky. I couldn't have done any of my stuff without that. When 2 such people, let alone 5 or 15 such people, get together, mountains move, because you have passion, you have collegiality, you have the reassurance, we're just going to do this. How would anyone do anything entrepreneurial without some sense of needing to do it, believing they might be able to do it? I think there's a kind of person that can create extraordinary new initiatives by being a leader, and by being a leader who leads from the middle of the pack. There's this thing called servant leadership, and it has to do with making the people who collaborate with you feel that you value them and that you may be first among equals, because somebody's got to say, let's go over there. However, it's not instead of appreciating them, it is an empowerment of how you appreciate them. And I look at my 7 nonprofits, actually 8, God help me, recently, working on the 8th. And I see that I couldn't have done any of them. I mean, look, Starlight, the Starlight Children's Foundation, which I founded all those decades ago, we sent the accountants back to add up all the money we ever raised in Australia, Canada, the United States, the UK, and it was well over $1 billion. Well, I didn't raise that on my own. I have no idea how you raise $1 billion, but I cast it. Yeah. I put the crew together. Right. I kept them happy. And one of the ways that I find my happiness is by leading from the middle. I mean, I'm the guy, after running Starlight hands-on as its leader every hour that got invented for 25 years, I said in the boardroom, I hope you don't hate this idea, but I look around here and I realize you're waiting for me to die. And I have no intention of dying anytime soon. So I'm telling you right here, right now, that in 1 year, I will no longer be president of this charity. And I hope you can get your act together and elect someone else. And if you want me, I'll be on the board as long as I'm alive, but I'm not going to lead it.
Yeah.
One of you should lead it, and 20 of you should help.
Right.
And then 500 of you should help as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they did. And it went from strength to strength.
Yeah.
So I think there's a need in the world for leaders, absolutely, especially those who care about the world. But also, I think there's a time where you get your derriere out of the chair and you give opportunities to other people. For a young person, volunteering and bringing your skill set to a charity is one of the great self-interested things that you can do.
Right.
You will meet wonderful people. Any good idea you have, you will immediately be made the vice president of implementing your idea, because charities, we yearn for people because we're not paying most of them.
And you write about that in Finding Happy. I mean, you really say that you can find advancement so quickly because they're hungry for that talent.
Yeah. Or how about, let me ask you, hold up the book. What's the largest word, the largest font on the front?
Love?
Yes. So one of the principal, because they're all, young adults, have a lot of hormones flying around, and they are desperate
Right.
to meet somebody to love and who will love them. And in my mentoring and in the book, I say, so how are you going to do that?
Right.
Are you happy with how that's turned out? God bless. If you found someone with whom you share unconditional love and you think they're excellent and you could see yourself spending your life with them, well, you lucked out and you aced out and you presented well, and God bless. However, almost every young adult I know isn't happy with the state of their relationships. It's tricky. It's one of those things that I know now that I wish I knew when I was 18. So there's a whole series of chapters about how do you find love. Seriously, you think you're going to find love by flipping left and right on an app? You know that they've used AI on the picture and they don't really look like that. And more importantly, the way they've described themselves, it's a little bit ambitious and beyond reality.
Right.
How do you meet someone so that you come to understand them in a profound way before you jump? I believe one very important way you can do it is go volunteer. First of all, there won't be anybody there who is volunteering other than because they care about the issue. So if you care about global warming, go and volunteer to a charity that's pushing back on carbon emissions or whatever. If you care about foster kids, volunteer for firststar.org. If you care about seriously ill children who are sad, go volunteer for Starlight. If you care about homeless people, volunteer for edar.org. You will meet people and you will get to know them in the world's best way, which is by collaborating with them to achieve something that is a mutual goal.
That's beautiful.
We used to do when the kids lived at home and they were smaller, and we got 4 of them. We did this thing, which I shamelessly stole from a Bruce Willis film, which had a family in it. I can't remember the name of the film, but the parents would say to the kids at dinner, okay, it's that moment, highs and lows, please. And they would start, and they had umpteen kids. And they would start with the youngest, and the little kid would sit there and say, my high today was so-and-so, so-and-so. What was your low? My low was so-and-so bullied me at school. And a lot of that was encouraging children to tell stories, which is much easier, it turns out, for children than it is for grown-ups, because kids are much more attuned to the emotion of the story because their empathy hasn't been knocked out of them yet by, a hard knocks adult life. And the way I think of raising children is don't make it worse. Take what is wonderful because they're children and help them have more tools and more skills and more opportunities, but kind of spiritually leave them alone, because their creativity, their empathy, and their relationship with their universe is perfected when they're born. And I think good parenting is don't muck it up.
Amen to that. And there's so much in your book about raising this next generation of empathetic service hearts. I mean, your chapter takeaways and reflective questions, and they're built to encourage that.
It's such a dreadful time. I think it may be the worst moment for young adults in 50 years or something like that. I think to be a young adult, first of all, COVID happened. To be deprived of your peers, your friends, the lunchroom table, face-to-face relationships with your teachers, your coach. 2.5 years is a monstrously large proportion of a 15-year-old's life. And they were thrown back-footed by that. And after COVID, a lot of what we had to do when we somehow survived in First Star, because it's a very high touch, face-to-face kind of a, if you fall off the ladder, we'll put you back, but only you can move your feet and meet your new siblings, and here are the reliable grown-ups. That was all ripped away by COVID, and we did the damn best we could on and Google Meet, and it kept the thing alive. Thank God COVID was over in 2.5 years. We didn't lose any kids. But what we did lose was the academic performance, and we then did extra tutoring, and we got it back up, and everything is now, back where it should be academically. And also, I have to say, in a weird way, a wonderful thing about kids in foster care is they are more resilient, because they have to be, than the rest of kids. And their resilience made them reforge the bonds once they were back face to face. I mean, they screamed when we were first allowed to put them same place at the same time. They had so bonded with the other 29 kids in their cohort or class, they screamed and ran across the quadrangle. Oh my God, I missed you so much. And those, I think, unconditional love, it's another whole chapter in the book. Go find it. Hopefully in a good family, you can find it in your family. If not, you've got to go find it somewhere else. I do believe that to thrive, every young person must have someone that they know loves them, even if they do something bad, even if they fall off the ladder. You have to have someone who will put you back on the ladder. Do it in First Star. Good families do it. Bad families don't.
It reminds me of what Father Gregory Boyle, who started Homeboy Industries, he would say, people change when they're cherished. And that reminds me of the work that you do with First Star.
Well, it's the truth. Also, it's wider than that in my life. Like in Starlight, it's obviously a good idea to make a seriously ill child happier. Why? Well, A, because it's good to make anyone happier, but also B, because they use less pain medicine. And we've studied that to such a degree. You distract someone with happiness and they just simply don't use as much analgesia, painkiller. But also, it's wider than the child. The family paradigm, when there's a seriously ill child, who might die, the whole family is in disarray. The parents haven't discussed anything with each other except the illness of the child for, say, 2 years. The siblings is so interesting. The younger siblings are jealous of the attention that the ill sibling gets because they don't know better. And the older siblings have guilt. How come my sister got seriously ill and she might die and I'm fine, And it creates a terrible circular problem in the family. And in steams Starlight and says, all right, let's talk about what will make you happy. We got all this stuff. Some of it's audiovisual. Some has to do with community. Some has to do with other ways that we can bring you together and shared experiences. And what would make you happy? And we've been doing that now 40 years, and we've helped millions and millions and millions of children. But what people don't focus on is each of them has a family, almost all of them has a family, and I'd like to think we've knitted them together. I remember Jamie Lee Curtis saying to me that she only heard about Starlight because we've never been as good at PR as we are at actually doing the work. She said to me, I got to know Starlight because the Starlight Fun Center, a thing on wheels in Children's Hospital LA, it was the only thing that was good and that my kid loved. And I loved using the fun center with my kid. Thank
That's
God.
incredible.
And, then Jamie Lee has gone on and done all sorts of stuff for Starlight, but she met us in the best possible way, which is she saw the healing effect of the 8 psychosocial services that we do, or at least she saw one of them. And when we started, we had no idea that we could help a child's physical health sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And in fact, we were frightened to ever tell anybody that on occasion something would happen, like a kid would say, I want to go to Disney World. And we'd say, well, okay, we talked to the doctor. You can't go to Disney World because you can't travel. But let's talk about another thing that we can do that will make you happy. And occasionally they would say, I don't want another thing. I want to go to Disney World and I want to take my sister and my brother and my mom and dad, and I want to go. And we'd say, well, if your T cell count comes up and if Dr. So-and-so says you can go, we will do it. And son of a gun, not always, but in some cases, the T cell count, the immune system ramped itself up to get ready to travel.
That's amazing.
And that's called PNI, psychoneuroimmunology.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the charity, we used to say, but don't tell anybody about it. They think we're nuts. They'll think we're Shirley MacLaine laying on crystals. It's nothing like that. It's actual studied science, and it's fascinating because it works in both directions. When you make someone happy, their T cell count rises a lot, often. If their T cell count rises, they become less depressed. So you either have a vicious circle where the more depressed they are, the worse off their T cell count is, or look at it on the optimistic side, make them happy, raise their T cell count. Maybe you can help them fight their cancer or whatever it is. It's not always true, but it is often true. And we know of what we speak. Stephen and I founded Starbright World, Steven Spielberg and I. We became worried. Why would anyone who works in a hospital give us the time of day? They know that we don't know about medicine. And so we got USC, the University of Southern California. We commissioned this thing called the Red Book, which was a great thick document studying the science of making people happy and giving them community, and with all sorts of letters after the authors of the paper's names. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger because people started studying. The more they would read these papers, these learned papers, the more they would do their own research. And we just said, yes, please study us. And we ended up with a great thick thing. And the best thing that could happen would be someone in a hospital that we hadn't conquered yet to cooperate with us would say, why is it any good?
Yeah.
And we'd say, oh, because it makes children happy. But by the way, read this.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that you said that last year 2.4 million hospitalized kids experienced joy and relief through Starlight.
Hopefully so,
Yeah.
in almost every case. And we're just in the United States. We're in 800 hospitals.
Amazing. So you describe yourself, let's see, as a pro-social entrepreneur. I've come to believe that what I'm supposed to do on the earth is bring new solutions to old problems. And you've done that again and again. You talk about Tikkun Olam, which I was familiar with, help heal the world. You also introduced me to something new. Say it again. Hini Aini, here I am.
Here I am.
Say it again.
Hineni,
Hineni.
Hineini. It just means here I am. And it's what two people who feel the need to lift up the world, they have that instinct. They feel a bit chosen to do it, obligated to do it, if you like. It's what they do when they meet and collaborate together to do something grand.
And it requires showing up. And I love the way that you've shown up in this book and in this conversation. So thank you so much, Peter.
You're very kind. The publishers thought I was mad. I put my email address in the book. It's buried. You actually have to read the book in
Good.
order to find it.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get emails. I'm so delighted. They said, but what will you do if you have 50,000 emails? I said, well, I should be so lucky. I will hire people to help me reply. And they said, could be 100,000.
Right.
I think life is circular and I want feedback, and it will inform what I do for the second edition. And I want to be of service, and the book is like an amplification of what I'm already doing.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful book. Beautiful conversation. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you. Privilege.
Thank you for listening. Our music was written for us by the incredible duo of Jack Canfora and Rob Koenig. For show notes and more great inspiration, see avitiva.com, AVITIVA.com.